This article from a tribology journal is a very clear example of experimental research. And there's a couple ways that we can tell this very easily, and some features that I think are good writing strategies for you to emulate, for you to mimic in your own writing. So first of all, in the abstract, they refer to previous studies and really clearly indicate how this research connects to previous research. And the focus is very much on the results of this research. There's this nice sentence: in this paper, we aim to test and list what the research question is. And when we get down here, the focus is on the results. The results illustrate and they show exactly what the major results are from this research. So the focus is really on the new knowledge that they regain. The structure of the paper goes very clearly according to our expectations, with an introduction followed by next methods, and the methods section is broken down into lots of subheadings: 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. This is typical. This is something that you should absolutely imitate in your own writing. And the idea is, because people often skip over this section when they read, but they will come back to it when they have particular questions. So you want to make it really easy for them to find the section where the answer to their question is most likely to lie. I also want to point out in their figures here, look how long the captions are. Look how much information is in here. This is a very good and strong feature of writing. You want to include as much information as possible in the captions so that readers don't have to read the text, so that they can just read the figure in the caption and understand everything that it is that they need in order to comprehend the main results of this study. Next, we move on. Section 3 is the results. So this is really clearly following the IMRAD format: introduction, method, results. The results are also broken into sections and subsections with lots of figures, and really figures that have very detailed captions. The results are broken into multiple sections and subsections. This is very typical. And then we get to the discussion. Now, compared to the conclusion of a design or experimental paper, where the conclusion is very short, a discussion section in a traditional experimental paper tends to be fairly long, because they are showing how their research is consistent with prior results. Again, this is consistent. Or they might say how it differs, how it contrasts or contradicts, or how it explains a phenomenon found in other studies. So look at how they use this language in here to show how they replicate, reinforce, and extend, contribute to other knowledge. Now, one thing that this paper does that I do not like, something that I would prefer you not do, is that they refer to specific figures in the discussion section, and they point out new data or new figures that they have not discussed elsewhere in the result. In general, we expect in the discussion section to not see any new data. We expect the discussion section to kind of wrap up and explain how the data that is presented in the results section fits with what we already know. Now, that said, that's what's typical, but it is common to see sort of a mix of results and discussion section together, depending on the context. Chemistry is a field where results and discussion are often combined. And the more similar your research is to chemistry, the more likely it is that you might see that or you might do that in your research. Now, in addition to the discussion section, this paper has a tiny conclusion section where it just summarizes some of the main findings of the research. Now I want to show one more example of a traditional experimental project, and this one is a little bit of a hybrid between an experimental research and proof of concept, because what they are testing, what they are evaluating here is a particular gait training program that they have designed. So it is a little bit testing the how well this new design or this new program works. However, since the focus of this is really on the results, and they don't spend a lot of time describing their gait of training, their gait retraining program, since that's not a big part of this article, I consider this more of a traditional experimental study. And like the other ones we've looked at, starts with an introduction, just doesn't have a heading. Then it goes into methods here and broken into clear subsections so that we can easily jump to these sections and find the various ways that they obtained their information, the ways that they obtained their data and what they studied. Then the results section again, and again I want you to note how detailed the captions are and to really see that this is the rule rather than the exception, to have very detailed captions that have enough information so that people should not actually need to read the text. The text is to have more detail and to help us understand. And then this article has a long discussion section that really clearly says how this study fits in with other research. In the discussion section to a typical experimental article, we expect the discussion to start off first with a summary of all of the most important results. We then expect the discussion section to connect those results to other research and really use some key phrases that show how this research is similar or extends the knowledge found in other research. After connecting the current study to other research and describing how our understanding of this area or the phenomenon that is being studied has changed, then the discussion section typically talks about problems or flaws in the study. And we'll talk then about the directions for future research. So for instance, here we get the phrase that it is unclear whether the results would remain if it went really long term. So they suggest that future research might do more of these long-term follow-ups with these patients. Then there is a brief concluding paragraph, but this conclusion is really just here so the paper doesn't just trail off. So it re-summarizes what this study found and why these results are important.